Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We're in the book of 2 Samuel, and we're not that far from the end.
Right.
Actually, we're getting really close here.
Still a lot of stuff to go with, though.
A lot of stuff to go,
Yeah.
but it's, and I mean, every week's reading is just packed with stuff.
Right, so we're following King David and his life, and we see his consolidated power, and a number of things have happened. But the big things we got to keep in mind is there's still a curse, right? His family will never get past the sword, right? There's always going to be trouble in his family, and we're seeing that. So the latest one was one of his sons, Absalom, decided I can be king. And actually took over for a little while. And last week we saw that he was killed in battle. And that's where we stopped. Because the war kind of ended. We stopped in the middle of a chapter.
Yeah, halfway through chapter 18. And we're really only doing a couple of chapters this week because they're a little bit longer and you know, a lot of detail. So yeah, halfway through chapter 18, David's key general, Joab, kills Absalom.
Right.
And
I mean,
the way
intentionally.
This wasn't
an accident.
battle.
And David basically said, "Be nice to him or treat him kindly."
Joab didn't care.
Yeah. Well, he caused a war.
And the way it was funny the way you said it last time is you're just like, and everybody went home. I mean, it's just sort of what happened.
Kind of the way it was. Yeah, exactly. So now the battle is stopped, and you know, how does David get notified? Well, there's no texting, there's no calls, right? So literally people are running from the battle with news. And of course, they only know what they know or what they see. So reports can be wrong.
One guy shows up, we won. What happened to Absalom? You know, I really don't know. That's a good question.
Oh, here comes another guy.
Here comes another guy.
So David is distraught, right? He finds out his son has been killed, and he is crying. You know, should have been good news. Hey, you're still king. You're still in there.
Yeah, we win.
Yeah. What did you want? The other guy to win? But it was received as bad news by David, and he went to his room crying about it. Right. And in chapter 19, he continues to cry and continues to avoid everyone. And this was a victory, but nobody felt that way. So Joab actually went to his room. And I picture him yelling. And you know, and I picture him being a fatherly figure to David.
In this moment,
where he has been around him long enough that he can, in private, go man to man with him. And he's basically telling him, "Shut up and man up."
Exactly. Well, I mean, you've got this civil war, and you've got, you know, father versus son, and you got you know, people taking sides, and the son dies, and the father's crying, and everybody. I mean, this is the warrior, the general. He's like, our guys just won. They can't celebrate because you're crying. Everybody's walking around with their tail between their legs. He actually used the word embarrassed here. It's like,
well, and people died because of you or for you. Acknowledge it. So
you're crying for your son, but you're not crying for everybody else's sons who died. You know, all
and basically also said, you got to do something now or you're really going to lose your life. You know, this
nobody knows what to do. And I like the way you said, man up, stand up, be the king. You're the king. You know, do kingly stuff.
So he did the kingly. He did a kingly thing. He went out and sat by the gate. But we got to understand the context.
I mean, he cleaned up. He went out. He took his seat where he was supposed to be, and people were like,
people came by. So
right.
There were conversations and there was talking. So
but not yet back in Jerusalem. It's not like he's sitting in the capital on his throne. He's still out from where he ran.
That is a very good point.
And so he went back and he took his space in public, but he hasn't gone back to Jerusalem yet.
Well, and he left Jerusalem, and Absalom took his place. Right. So now is there cleanup that has to be done there? Is he going to be welcomed back? Is somebody else from Absalom's party taking? I'm king now because I'm next. So all that.
So that still has to be taken care of.
And David does it very well, right? He sends notice to them, to the priests. He goes right to the priests, which is kind of cool. Why are you delaying in calling me back? You know, he pushes it back on them. Shouldn't you be calling your king back? And so they did, and David took it as that's when I can return. So on the way back, and you got to figure out the whole time. I mean, there's a war there, and people claim to be on one side versus the other side. So there's winners and losers. We know David's side won, but now you have these people who are Israelites. I mean, they're Jews.
Yeah.
And they're picked the wrong side.
Yeah,
so they're throwing themselves at David's feet. Do whatever you want, and David takes the high road again.
It's funny because remember last time the guy, he was a relative of Saul's, and he was yelling at David and throwing rocks. Right, yep. Literally throwing rocks.
Same guy, right?
Same guy. He's like, "Oh, please don't hold this against me. I sinned," and like I don't have any rocks in my hand.
I won't kill you again.
I won't.
But David took the high road again,
he
which he had to as a king, and it might have been hard, but it was also, guys, we're one nation. We gotta be one nation and act like one nation.
Yeah.
and he said, should anybody be put to death in Israel today?
Yeah.
Which is
a really great, he's lost his son. We've lost enough. Here's my prayer. Haven't enough people died? Yeah. Is really what he's saying. Haven't enough people died?
Yeah. So everything's perfect again, right? He goes back. So the prophet Nathan had convicted David of adultery. God told him to. And in response, God told David, through Nathan, three things. The sword will never depart from your house, and we're seeing that is active and it's still going.
Yep.
Your son with Bathsheba will surely die. That happened. We saw that happen.
Yep.
Your wives will sleep with your companions.
Yep.
Absalom did this.
That's exactly what Absalom did with some of David's concubines.
Yeah, there was 10 concubines that were, we said it a couple weeks ago, I think,
yep.
On the roof, right?
Yeah, in plain sight of everybody, which was very common in the culture, to take the wives or the concubines of the king that you just overthrew, and that showed that you were taking over ownership, whatever.
Yep. Yep. So there were 10 concubines that did that. Not that they had a choice in there, but they did it.
But David had left them back in the palace. He had taken all of his other wives and concubines with him. He left 10 there to basically keep house almost. Yeah. And those are the ones that Absalom slept with.
Right. So David didn't have them put to death, but he had them be considered widows.
Yeah.
So I took that to mean, I'm dead to you. And I think you might even have said that.
Well, Absalom was dead because Absalom had taken them.
Right, but David was also dead to them.
Right.
I mean, he was not going to take them back as a wife.
Right. Because when Absalom slept with them, they became
wives.
Absalom's. Yeah. David was dead to them at that point, and then when Absalom died, David considered them widows and just basically parked them off into a secluded, solitary part of the harem.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. All right. So now is everything okay and back to normal?
Of course it's not.
All right. So there was a guy.
Always a guy.
Yeah, always a guy named Sheba. He was a Benjamite, which is same as Saul.
Right.
So right away you got to think there's going to be problems coming up.
Yep.
And he was able to convince the Israelites, so the northern army,
Absalom's army, basically.
Right. Yeah, to leave and go home.
Just go home.
Yep.
Don't go back to Jerusalem with David. Don't side with David. You don't have to side with anybody. Just go home.
Just go home. Live your life. Go home.
Yeah.
So the men of Judah, which is the southern part, and I'm bringing these up because these are in your reading, so they will use either northern or Israelites to be Absalom's part of the army, and it'll be southern or men of Judah to be David's side.
Yep.
So was this a big deal?
Well, yes, because David's going back and he's trying to have unity in Israel, and you got this one loud guy. There's always a loud voice, and he's like, well, we don't have any share with David. We don't have any part with David. We're still under Saul. Saul's been dead now for, whatever. And you don't have to either. He's not saying go against David. He's just saying you don't have to follow. You don't have to be in the army. There's no requirement to be in the army. Just go back to your homes. And they're like, that's true.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Sounds like a good idea.
Right. So David sent an army leader that was a leader under Absalom to deal with him.
Yep.
Hey, would you take care of this guy?
Yep.
He took too long.
It took him longer to accomplish the task than David had given him. Was he being a little slow? Was it just too long? Was it whatever?
Yeah, it's not really explained.
Yeah,
right.
It's not.
Right. So David then sent Abishai to take care of Sheba, and Joab went with him.
Yep.
So when Joab met the first guy that was sent, he kills him.
Yeah. because he still looks at him as a traitor because he had followed Absalom. And Joab...
So it wasn't necessarily that he was taking too long to follow this guy. It was the traitor. You were a traitor in the previous war.
Yeah. From Joab's standpoint, we have to. Joab is sometimes David's conscience, and sometimes he's David's hitman. And I'm not sure David really cared which one was going on at any given time. He knew Joab would take care of
whatever the problem
was, right? So in this case, he didn't want him to kill Absalom. He did it anyway. He did not, I don't think he wanted him to kill Amasa. He did it anyway. So he was acting, he basically had all the authority that he wanted.
Right.
And David was not reining him in, which will cause problems later on. And so this time he decided, you were on the other side, and I'm not sure that I can trust you, and I simply don't want, the king to have to make that decision. So he killed him.
So there's some wording in there that's a little weird about, did he have two knives because one dropped, or did he shift the knife into his hands?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he stabs him in the stomach.
He's playing the game, right? Did he drop one to throw him off guard, and he had a second one in there, whatever, and yeah.
Right.
Well, even the thing, left hand, right hand. This guy's a warrior. He knows how to get this done.
Right. So then there's a piece where the army is walking by, and this guy is not dead yet. And so he becomes a bottleneck, so somebody actually kind of drags him out of the way. And then, so they move on.
Well, also, one thing is that we have not seen really anything to do with the Mosaic Law for some time now, but it's still against the Mosaic Law to touch a dead body. You become unclean.
Right.
And so there's this, is he dead? Is he not dead? Is he a carcass? Do I have to go around him? Whatever, in the middle of the road. And they recognize him because they're still part of the same, like you said, the same thing.
But this is also the first time that the two troops are kind of together too, right? So you have the northern, and now their leader is dead, and now the southern guys are kind of walking in.
There's a lot of awkwardness going on here. So somebody just drags him out of the road just so that we can get things going again.
Because what they're really tasked to do is get a guy by the name of Sheba.
Yeah.
And Sheba has some men with him too. So Sheba's ahead. They're starting to catch up. Sheba goes to a town, and what was it, Abel, that they're in, and he gets inside the gate.
He hides out in there.
And he's hiding in there. And now the army surrounds the city, and the people in the city are like, "What do we do?
Why are you messing with us?" Right.
Yeah. So. Amazingly enough, there's a conversation that happens with
another
wise woman.
Another wise woman, yeah.
But the wise woman's like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Look, this is out of hand. We're after one guy." One guy? Oh, hold on a minute. So they go talk to the town elders. They kill the guy. They throw his head over,
and everybody goes home.
Can you imagine being a private in that army? Oh, time to go. Time to go home. Hey, we're going home again.
Didn't we just get here?
And then at the end of the chapter, we learn of David's council members' names.
Yeah, basically his cabinet, right?
Yeah. So is this another? We'll find there'll be more about these guys later. Or?
Yeah, some of these guys will show up again. Some of these guys show up a lot. Some of them don't show up at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then chapter 21 is kind of weird because it seems like the events that we're going to be talking about had to have happened earlier in David's career.
Yeah, we're doing like a
many years
back.
When he first
this
became
is a
king,
rewind.
Right?
Yeah.
So we'll try to point those out as we go along on why we think that. So there was a famine for 3 consecutive years, and if we think about a famine in the United States, we never had one in my life.
Yeah, not in the big cities. They're definitely in rural places,
but not even today.
Yeah, sometimes because of if there's a drought, think middle of Kansas or something, or Arkansas or northern Texas, there's a drought, and so it's hard to get water, and some places can still do that.
But definitely third world countries, much more prevalent. But 3 consecutive years too. So this is very hard. Yeah. People are going to die, and as resources run out, people get stupid, people get mad, people take things under their own reign, so violence escalates up. So David asked God, why the famine?
Yep.
And God responds to him. So we'll first give David credit for asking God. God answers him, which is awesome. And he said, because of Saul and his blood-stained family.
Yeah.
And now David's like, oh, all right, who do I talk to? What's my next step? And this is really the first reason why we think the timing is different, because if God made this an issue, he wouldn't have made it in the middle of David's reign.
Yeah.
It would have been when David first started out, hey, we got something that you got to fix from the last guy before you start your reign.
And he had killed some Gibeonites, which is, and now...
Did we know that?
Well...
Because Saul killed everybody, right?
Well, yeah, no. And so it says in verse 2, now the Gibeonites were not descendants of Israel, they were a remnant of the Amorites, and the Israelites had made a promise to them. Well, you have to go all the way back to Joshua. And Joshua, when he was supposed to be taking over the land, made this treaty with the Gibeonites because they were the ones who had pretended like they came in from a long distance, and their bread was moldy and everything. And Joshua made a treaty with them: we will not kill you. Then they found out that they were from close by, and he had tricked him and everything. He said, "Fine, I'll still not kill you, but you're going to work for us." And in Joshua it says, and they became slaves or whatever under this treaty. Well, now Saul had been killing these people that Joshua had made a treaty with, and God said, "You don't get to do that." Right. Because Joshua
they said you left us a broken house.
Yep.
So they, what do you want? What do you need?
So
and
basically,
they're like, we don't need money.
Yeah, Saul had violated this 400-year-old covenant.
Yeah. Wow. Right. So they said, let us have 7 male descendants, turn them over to us.
Of Saul's.
Yeah, of Saul's, and we'll execute them.
Which now...
And then it'll be tit for tat.
Yeah, but now David's sort of in a conundrum, isn't he?
Right. David has to give up 7 of who he promised to
David
save.
Promised Saul, I'm going to take care of your family, and the Gibeonites are like, you got to give us 7 of Saul's, descendants. So what is the right thing for David to do? Does he go back on his promise for Saul, or does he,
Well, it's a hard one, but it sure seems like he has to give up the 7 because that's where God has the problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got one family is not as great as the nation. The nation doesn't suffer for one family or whatever. But this was justice. This is not just revenge. They could have said, "Oh, wipe out all of Saul's family and everything." They said, "Give us 7, and we will call that justice."
Right.
That's the right thing to do.
Right.
That's the right thing to do.
So then there's questions of who to give up. Yeah. Right. So
how do you pick? Well, I never liked that guy.
Well, it is right. And who gets to pick?
Yeah.
David, give Uncle Larry. He's 95.
All the old ones. Yeah.
Right. So it's hard. So David. So this is another reason why we think it happened much earlier, right? Because Jonathan's son kind of has some special treatment, and it seems like it's part of this. As part of this, he seems to be spared from that.
Specifically sparing Jonathan's son Mephibosheth. Now, there are 2 guys. This is one of the things this is why one of the things that these videos are for, right? Yeah. There are 2 different guys named Mephibosheth. One of them is Saul's son, which means Jonathan's brother, or half-brother or something. Right. And then there's Jonathan's son, which is the guy that David is sparing, right? So I'm sure he's named after his uncle Mephibosheth or whatever. Right. So don't get confused. Yeah. There are actually 2 of them. One of them goes and gets executed.
So I had to read that section 3 times.
One of them does.
One time, wrote it down, and that's not right. Changed it, and then you told me the right one. I read it the 3rd time and went, oh, yeah, there it is. Obvious.
Right? Yeah. So there's some names in here whom, she bore to him, and, don't get lost in all the weeds here. 7 guys from Saul's descendants were executed as justice for what Saul did to the Gibeonites. And then it was over. And justice had prevailed.
Right. So there's a little section after that after the execution, there was a lady by the name of Rizpah. Mm-hmm. She didn't let any of the animals feed on the bodies until the rains came. Yep. So that's morning, night. Yep. So she would have been outside of Saul's family.
Well, so she shows up in verse 8. So the king took Armani, which is not the suit guy, and Mephibosheth, which is Saul's son, the 2 sons of Ai's daughter Rizpah, whom she had borne to Saul. Okay, so this was Rizpah, one of Saul's wives.
Okay. Okay, so she is taking care of
So
family.
she's
here.
taking care of the corpses. Basically, she's not letting the vultures come and tear apart the corpses of her sons and some of
so
these other guys.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
So the rain's coming is an indication that everything is okay, or that God says everything is okay.
Right, because
now
it was
it's
a
gonna
famine.
rain.
Right.
Yeah. So the rains are coming back.
Yep.
So what David did then is he took the bones of those that were executed, the 7, also Saul and Jonathan, and buried them all together.
Which we learned at the beginning of 2 Samuel that David got those bones or the corpses because their bodies were hung up, and he got the bones and buried them.
Yeah,
now we're seeing a little bit more information of what we learned like 20 chapters ago.
But this is really a good reason why we think it happened earlier, or this whole chapter happened earlier.
Yeah.
And then at the end, Israel's engaging in various battles with the Philistines.
Yeah.
To me, what the interesting part was they were specifically looking for David to kill. And so the army decided he was too valuable to be in war. And that kind of goes back into what we talked about last time when David split his armies in 3 groups. He wanted to be with one, and they're like, you're going to have to sit this one out.
Yeah.
Same way here. You must not extinguish the lamp of Israel.
So I think we're seeing some one-off things that I think this is sort of a summary of David's reign. I don't think it all happened at the same time. I think these are one-off things. Interesting fun fact: we've got some relatives of Goliath in here that that are mentioned. So I think chapter 21 just sort of gives an overview from early in David's career. David and Saul and Jonathan's bodies. And a little bit later, just David is the warrior king. I mean, his entire 40-year reign is one of bloodshed, basically, of one kind or another. Civil wars within Israel, Philistine wars. It's
amazing how many civil wars we've already seen.
Yeah. And that comes back to God said, "The sword will not depart from your house." So it's not just within David's house, but Judah as well, and everything. So
all right, so into week 5.
Yeah, we're getting really close to the end here now. So hopefully you're finding this interesting, not just interesting from an intellectual standpoint, but just seeing, as we've mentioned many times, these are real people, real lives, real families. Even just the picture here of a mother not wanting the carrion birds to tear apart the corpses of her sons, as she's mourning over their deaths because of her husband's sin. Just all of that stuff, we can see this is real people with real lives. And I hope you don't gloss over that while you're reading. If you have questions and comments as you're reading, feel free to send those our way. We'd love to field those and share some information with you if you have some of those questions. Until then, we hope you enjoy your reading, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye.